If you're like me, the bitter cold in the last couple of weeks had me thinking more about the fund and has made me especially excited to be here today with all of you to give the gift of warmth. On behalf of Unitil and our partner utilities that also sponsor and support this fund, I would like to thank everyone here for your commitment in making this critically important assistance available to moderate income families in temporary crisis and who do not qualify for federal or state assistance. First off, I would like to acknowledge our featured speakers with us today. Michael Judge, Undersecretary of Energy with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Kevin Lemanowitz, Chief Meteorologist at Boston 25 News, WFXT TV. And Michael McLaughlin, welcome. I would also like to welcome Jamie Van Nostrand, Chair of the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, Alicia Flood, the Environmental Justice Senior Lead at the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, and Samantha Kelly, representing State Representative Adrienne Ramos and her office. Due to the continued high costs of essentials like food and rent, the fund is important as ever this winter season and even into the spring. The successful 40-year history of the fund makes me especially confident that we will expand its good work this year and make a real difference in the lives of thousands of individuals and families in temporary crisis throughout the state. Before we enjoy our breakfast buffet, I would like to ask Major Valerie Kahn, Program Secretary for the Massachusetts Division of the Salvation Army, to provide an opening prayer. Major.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this day, this morning, and as we walk into this day, we thank you for all that you provide for us. Thank you for those in this room and those that are representing so many across the state who have been given sensitive spirits and hearts to help those who are in need. We pray this morning as we enjoy fellowship and we hear from our fellow guests here this morning that we too would be encouraged to give support and assistance to those around us. Thank you for this relationship that we've had all these years, and we pray, Father, that our food would be blessed and that our conversation around the table would be a blessing to others. And we say this in your name. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. So on behalf of the fund, I do want to, again, thank you for showing your commitment and participating in the campaign kickoff today. We usually do this in November, but sometimes in January, sometimes in November, and this time it's in January. It's hard to believe that this fund has been providing assistance to more than 96,000 households since its inception in 1985 and more than 1,325 families last year alone. So I think that deserves a round of applause. And of course, the success cannot be achieved without a very dedicated committee, and I'd like to thank those members who are here today and to stand and be recognized when I call your name, put you on the spot. Marie McCabe with North Attleboro Electric, who's the fund's vice chair. Damaris Dominguez with National Grid and the fund secretary. Virginia Anthony and Mary Ellen Molloy with Eversource Energy. Robert Whedon from Reading Municipal Light. Liberty's Jen Hemian. Jim Ritchie at Braintree Electric Light Department. Alicia Nichols with Littleton Electric Light. And Ann Finley from Hull Municipal Light Plant. Thank you, everyone. So also vital to the success of the fund are the 18 sponsoring energy companies who support it through various giving programs and their customers who donate so generously each year. In fact, I'd like to specifically recognize the energy companies who sponsored this event today: Braintree Electric Light Department, Belmont Municipal Light, Eversource Energy, Littleton Electric Light, National Grid, North Attleboro Electric, and Unitil. And of course, a big thank you to the Salvation Army for administering the fund, especially Major Doris Setti, Financial Secretary, Armel Hisco, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any names, Greater Boston Regional Social Ministries Manager, Heather McFarland, Director of Communications, Marketing, Public Relations, and Christina Joseph, GNEF Coordinator, who all work closely with the fund and the committee, as well as its incredible social services staff across the state. And lastly, thank you to Lisa for getting put on the spot tonight. No, I'm kidding. And everyone at Unitil for supporting me and Good Neighbor Energy Fund in our committee's efforts. And as always, it requires a real collaborative effort for the fund to be so effective each year. So let's once again give the gift of warmth in our own way to ensure another successful campaign. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by saying that my wife and I are truly honored to be in your company this morning. This is our first attendance at a Good Neighbor Energy Fund breakfast, kickoff breakfast. Breakfast has been delicious, wouldn't you say? And this is a very impressive event. And David, where's David? David's somewhere around. You know how to throw a good party, my friend. Well, it gives me great pleasure to greet all of you this morning on behalf of the Salvation Army Massachusetts Division. I also want to extend greetings on behalf of our divisional commander, Major Everett Henry, who unfortunately could not be with us this morning. He had some unexpected business to attend to at national headquarters. He sends his apologies for not being able to attend and wishes to convey his warmest greetings to each of you. So thank you for coming. For 40 years, the Salvation Army has been truly blessed to administer the Good Neighbor Energy Fund and partner with all of you, the sponsoring energy companies, to help those in need by providing energy assistance to eligible residents in temporary crisis who are struggling to pay their energy bills. When our friends, loved ones, and neighbors are at their wits' end, without hope and desperate, it is critically important to have a place to turn when the unexpected happens. Because of you, our neighbors in need are able to find warmth each winter season and throughout the year. Thank you so much. I can say this, I can say it with a great degree of confidence that, and it won't come as any surprise to any of you, obviously, that across the entire state, our Salvation Army sites are already seeing what appears to be another record year of individuals and families needed help. They are seeing an increase in inquiries about the fund and other programs from moderate income households this winter season. Families are experiencing the continued high cost of living or some other unexpected circumstances, looking to the Salvation Army, looking forward to receiving assistance through the Good Neighbor Energy Fund. We continue to see people coming to us for help, and not only through the Good Neighbor Energy Fund, but all the social services programs that are offered by the Salvation Army. But this program is providing help, and it's making a difference in the lives of so many people. One of the many rewarding aspects of our social services ministry is that we have the chance to see firsthand the difference this fund makes in the lives of thousands of families in temporary crisis throughout the state each year. It is our experience that energy assistance from the fund is often just what is needed to make folks get through a difficult time. Well, as it has been a tradition in the past, during this kickoff, Major Henry has read a letter from a former recipient of the fund, as it provides a snapshot of what a family is truly experiencing at the time. It shows how the fund helps household overcome obstacles. Today, we are grateful to have Michael McCoughlin with us. Mike received assistance from the Salvation Army through the Good Neighbor Energy Fund within the past year or two, and has been gracious enough to agree to share his story with us. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in welcoming Mike?
I wanted to be here today to share my story, how the Good Neighbor Energy Fund has helped myself and my siblings. I served in the Navy for 4 years as a hospital corpsman, and then I continued with 1 year with the Navy Reserves here in Quincy with the 25th Marine Division at Camp Edwards, Cape Cod. And with my 5 years experience in the medical field, I continued on with the GI Bill and received my nursing license. And working in the medical field for 40 years, I tell my story as I've worked the circle of life, working from pediatrics to geriatric hospice. And it's been very rewarding. I'm originally a Dorchester guy, but the last 20 years, my two sisters, Kathy and Claire, we purchased a home here in beautiful Quincy. And just 3 years ago, another sister, Mary, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and we were thankful we had the room and she moved in with us. And as most of you here can agree with me, that caring for a loved one is both emotional and financially taxing on a family's household. I was told about the Good Neighbor Energy Fund, and I was blessed to meet Rosada Prince, who was very friendly and quickly eased my mind, anticipating being canceled again because financially we made too much with our Social Security. So over the last 2 years, the Good Neighbor Energy Fund has greatly helped my 3 siblings and myself getting through these harsh New England winters. And I would just like to thank everybody with the Good Neighbor Energy Fund, the Salvation Army, Rosetta Prince, Dave Hughes, and the fund has greatly helped myself and many other families around the state. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing your experience with us. Mike's experience is just one of many across the state of how the Good Neighbor Energy Fund plays such critical and meaningful roles in the lives of so many people. On behalf of those in need, I want to thank Lisa and Justin, and I'm calling names, now I'm going to get in trouble. Mary Ellen and Marie. I've met some of you, and Justin, Kevin, and all of you who play such important role in helping to make this program what it is. I want to also thank all of the energy sponsors who make extraordinary contribution to help us to help those in need. You know, I once heard that there are 3 groups of people: those who see things happen, those who make things happen, and those who wonder what happened. As I look across this room, I see men and women who make things happen day in and day out. And on behalf of the Salvation Army and those we serve, we express our gratitude. I think together we can make a difference in our world to make it a better place. So let's keep shining, let's keep doing all we can to help our neediest friends who need us most during these challenging times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Major, for your leadership and the Salvation Army's effective administration of the fund. And I thank you, Mike, for sharing your experience with us today. It really puts into perspective why we are all here. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker. Prior to his appointment, Undersecretary Mike Judge served as the Vice President for Policy for the Coalition of Community Solar Access, managing its policy team and leading its policy advocacy at the federal level. Prior to his time at CCSA, he spent over 12 years in various roles in Massachusetts state government, including Director of Electric Power, Regional and Federal Affairs at the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. Prior to his time at the DPU, he held several positions at the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, including Director of its Renewable and Alternative Energy Division. Please welcome Mike Judge, Undersecretary of Energy for the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
It's a really great event, great cause, great organization. I'm going to focus my remarks a little bit today on what the state is doing to address affordability issues as well, because there's a lot of different things that are going on in a lot of different forums. And so before I get into those details, I just wanted to set a little bit of context of some of the things that we're focused on at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So one of our core missions is is protecting the environment and reducing emissions to address climate change. And so, with that, one of the things that is the overarching requirements that we have to meet for this as a state is we have to achieve net zero emissions reductions by 2050, and then there are interim benchmarks that we need to meet along the way. And so, in particular, the Global Warming Solutions Act and the Climate Roadmap Law of 2021 require that we establish interim greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets, limit emissions by 50% below 1990 levels by 2030, 75% below 1990 levels by 2040, and then achieve that net zero requirement in 2050. And so we have a lot of different things and a lot of different programs and initiatives that are geared towards making this happen. And I listed off some of them down there below. And then what that means in terms of what needs to be actually accomplished and deployed, we have to deploy a tremendous amount of new clean energy generation. So to give you a sense of the scale of that, right now we have about 4,000 or so megawatts of solar deployed in Massachusetts. Our Clean Energy and Climate Plan estimates that we will need 27,000 megawatts by 2050. It also estimates that we'll need 23,000 megawatts or 24,000 megawatts of wind, 23,000 megawatts of which is likely going to be offshore wind by 2050 as well. Right now we have less than 100 megawatts operating. So we have a huge amount of generation capacity that needs to be deployed to achieve these emissions reductions. But we also need to transform the transportation and electric and building sectors of our economy. And the primary strategy for doing that is electrification. So deploying heat pumps and deploying electric vehicles. And in doing that, you're going to create a lot of new demand on the electric grid. And so that's another thing we need to account for and manage. So we're trying to balance this very complex, all these different complex competing priorities. And I think none of this is free, right? That's that's kind of why I'm highlighting it. And so there's going to be costs associated with this. But I think very front of mind for us in everything that we do is keeping electric rates and gas rates and just energy costs in general affordable for consumers as this transition occurs. So I want to highlight a few things that are going on that we have to address that affordability issue. The first thing I'll highlight are discount rates, so customer discount rates. People may be familiar with this. And so in the investor-owned utility service territories, so Eversource, Unitil, National Grid on the electric side, I'm focusing on electric rates here in particular. There are different discount rates that are available to income-eligible customers. And in Eversource and Unitil, there's one rate. In National Grid, there will soon be a tiered discount rate based on income levels. So this is a new innovation that was just approved last year by the Department of Public Utilities. National Grid is in the process of implementing this, but we're very excited about the possibilities here to really make electricity more affordable for National Grid customers. And the Department of Public Utilities is also looking at potentially expanding this to other service territories. They have an open investigation into affordability, and one of the things they're looking at is these tiered discount rates. In addition, one thing that was recently signed into law in November is provisions that allow the DPU to explore establishing a moderate income discount rate. So everyone in here should probably be well aware, there are when you have these cutoffs for eligibility, there are people who are just on the other side of that cutoff. And those people are often having just as much difficulty as paying their bills as others. And so establishing this new class of eligible customers to potentially receive discounts hopefully makes energy more affordable for those customers too. So this is something that it's brand new. The DPU is going to be looking into it, open proceeding on it, but very excited about the possibility of that this presents. Another thing that we're trying to do is really stabilize energy prices. So we have an electric grid that is very reliant on natural gas. And we've seen that natural gas can be very volatile in terms of, and is affected by global issues. So a couple winters ago, in the aftermath of Russia invading Ukraine, we saw global gas prices spike and supply rates more than double in some service territories from one winter to the next. And so that volatility is something we're trying to reduce, and one way that we can do that is through entering into long-term contracts with clean energy resources that don't have a fuel cost associated with them. So one project I'll just highlight, the New England Clean Energy Connect transmission line, which is going to bring hydropower down from Canada. That is expected to go into service later this year. The second that turns on, 20% of our electricity will come from that resource. That is a zero fuel cost resource. So there's going to be it's not going to be subject to price volatility or global events. And so that's something we're really trying to do is increase the amount of local or regional resources that are zero fuel costs in order to stabilize and reduce volatility in energy prices going forward. And then I think also I just highlighted here too, behind the meter solar, we are one of the leading states in the country in terms of distributed solar resources deployed. We're actually number 2 in the amount of solar per capita deployed in the United States, just behind Hawaii. And what that does is it has a tremendous ability to reduce daily energy demand. So on a sunny day like today, you might see a major dip in the amount of consumption on the electric grid in the middle of the day. And that avoids the need to run other types of power plants. And that has a price suppression effect that impacts and benefits all customers. So that's another thing, another way that we're trying to reduce and stabilize energy costs is by making investments in these technologies. Another area, there's a lot of stuff on this. I'll touch on a few things. Is we're trying to empower customers to make choices that help them reduce or control their energy costs. So that can take a number of different forms. We have energy efficiency programs that are nation leading. So you can get zero cost energy audits. There are weatherization measures that are available and in some cases are provided at no cost. There's no cost financing options. We have nation leading energy codes that are trying to make sure that new construction that is being built is being built to the highest possible standards so that we reduce the amount of electricity and energy that's consumed by these buildings. We have solar programs that are very successful that help defray the costs of making these investments in solar. We have programs that are focused on decarbonization through the deployment of heat pumps that takes the form of rebates, no-cost financing. I'll get into the heat pump rates in a second, but we also have programs to support electric vehicles. So we have electric vehicle rebates. There's a lot of different options that are available to consumers to help them make choices to reduce their energy costs and energy consumptions while also decarbonizing and reducing emissions. And so this is I think there's just a lot of opportunities for consumers to make these choices themselves, and we try to get this information out to them. And then the last thing I'll touch on are just a few other opportunities. So one thing that Governor Healy has led on since she was Attorney General is efforts to reform competitive retail electricity markets. So in Massachusetts, consumers can sign up with competitive retail electricity suppliers, but we've seen that those suppliers over the last 8 years that we have data for, customers have paid $577 million more for being signed up with those suppliers than if they had just stayed with their utility default service rate. And so that is deeply concerning to us, and we think there's a lot of opportunity for reform in that space. And so that's something that we are pushing for is legislative reforms or regulatory reforms enacted by the DPU in order to reduce the harm that we're seeing from that sector. Another thing we're constantly trying to improve our statewide energy efficiency and decarbonization offerings. There's a plan the next 3-year energy efficiency plan is actively before the Department of Public Utilities right now, and they have to make a decision on that by the end of the month. So looking forward to implementing the next iteration of our energy efficiency programs. We are also looking at new rate designs to lower the costs of operating electric vehicles and heat pumps. So our electric rates are, for the most part, volumetric in nature. And that's very good when you're trying to incentivize people to adopt traditional energy efficiency or solar, but when you're asking people to consume more electricity by adopting a heat pump or an electric vehicle, you need to think about different ways to approach those rate designs. So we have an interagency group that has been looking at rate designs to reduce the costs of operating heat pumps, that has recently put out some recommendations that will be filing a petition with the DPU to dig into this. The DPU has already approved some seasonal heat pump rates actually for National Grid customers and Unitil customers, which is very exciting. And I think the Unitil rates are actually available to customers now. And then there's also a filings before the DPU to expand managed electric vehicle charging options. So this allows customers to reduce costs of charging their electric vehicles, but at the same time provide grid services by not charging those vehicles during peak times. And then just a few more things I'll touch on. We've gotten a lot of federal grants in the last few years, and several that are focused on affordability. So just a few that I'll mention here. We have $156 million for Solar for All. That is a program that is designed to provide solar to low-income residents across the state through a variety of different means. We have $142 million in energy home efficiency rebates. So these are formula grants coming from the Department of Energy that the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources will administer and deploy. And then we're part of a regional consortium that won a $400+ million award to deploy heat pumps, $100 million of which is coming to Massachusetts. So we're trying to deploy these federal dollars, and we're just at the start of that. So there's a lot of money that's going to be put out the door that's heavily focused on providing benefits to low and moderate income residents. I think another thing, trying to make those discount rates easier to access. There's been some partnerships recently that expand the ability for more customers to access those rates. In particular, I'm going to botch who was involved, but I think it was the Department of Transitional Assistance and Utilities worked together to share information so that customers who are on, I think on Mass Health, can automatically be enrolled in these discount rates. And that could dramatically expand the enrollment rates for those discount rates, which would be very meaningful for those customers. And then lastly, we're trying to keep costs off customer bills where we can. Not all the programs that we run are on bills forever. I'll note the solar programs that we have, the older solar programs are expiring. So these SREC programs that were run in the 2010s, those programs at one point cost over $10 a month for customers. Those costs are coming off customer bills beginning this year and through 2027. So you'll start to see certain charges be removed from bills. The grid modernization investments that utilities are making, those will be coming off customer bills, I think, starting next year. The net metering recovery surcharge, we did a small reform where we just moved it to a different part of the bill, and that's saving customers more than $10 million a year. So we're constantly trying to find ways to take things off customer bills to improve affordability. But that's just sort of a snapshot of some of the things that we're doing, but I thought in the vein of what this fund does and its focus on making energy more affordable for customers, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing. But again, it's really my pleasure to be here today. I think this is great work that you're all doing, and keep it up. So, yeah, thanks.
Kevin was the first chief meteorologist for Boston 25 News at 10 in 1996 and has guided viewers through all the twists and turns of the New England weather for more than 28 years. He is also a Silver Circle honoree, a special recognition from the New England chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. It honors veteran television professionals who've made significant contributions to their community in their field of expertise for at least 25 years. Prior to working at Boston 25, Kevin was the chief meteorologist at WTIC in Hartford, Connecticut. Kevin is active in his community and has visited hundreds of schools, giving students and teachers a better understanding of how weather works, both locally and globally. He shares his love of meteorology and science expertise with a variety of groups as well, including ours this morning. To give us a little insight into the weather and what's in store for us for the rest of the winter and into the spring, please join me in welcoming Kevin Lemanowitz, Chief Meteorologist for Boston 25 News, WFXT TV.
So we're going to talk a little bit about meteorology because being a meteorologist in New England is something that is a challenge, no doubt. But people in Florida will say, oh, we deal with hurricanes. Well, we deal with snowstorms. And in Oklahoma, they say, oh, what about our tornadoes? Well, we get those too. And in California, they'll say, what about our earthquakes? And I say, well, okay. We get little ones. But the bottom line is everywhere in the world, you're going to have different challenges with the weather. And here in New England is a place that we are challenged every single year and can be different every single year. So becoming a meteorologist, I went to Cornell University, so I always highlight that because I just do. But there are many different places here in the Northeast that have programs in meteorology, and really good ones too. And I show you that just in case you have youngsters who are thinking about meteorology. There are some great schools. And since we talk a lot about affordability here, and you go to places like the top one, UMass at Lowell, can give you much better experience for an excellent program and for less money if you're a Massachusetts resident, obviously. The same with places like Plymouth State if you're from New Hampshire, or Western Connecticut State if you're in Connecticut. So they're not all Harvard level expensive. Don't bother to read all this. I just put it here so you can see that if you're going to be an actual meteorologist and get a degree in this, you're basically taking an engineering curriculum. You're doing calculus, you're doing physics, you're doing fluid dynamics, thermal dynamics. It's a pretty intense program. And then you get to your senior year and nobody comes to interview you. They interview all the engineers, but they don't interview the meteorologists. Well, with one exception, the Air Force wanted us. But it was also 1991, and if you remember, that was the first Gulf War. Had I known I was going to take like a week, I might have joined the Air Force. I was just so scared that I was going to be in the middle of a war, and I was just too chicken, quite frankly, to do that. So that's the experience you have as a meteorologist. Getting that gig afterwards isn't as easy despite this intense program. Al Roker didn't go through it, but he's a meteorologist. I show you that because you're going to find people on TV who may not be meteorologists. You know this guy? Pat Sajak started as a meteorologist in Los Angeles. Meteorologist. He was a weatherman in Los Angeles. But back then in the 70s, when TV was sort of in its infancy, still TV news, you got on TV as a funny person, or at one phase they called it, and pardon me ladies, but they called it the weather bunny phase, where they'd find the prettiest woman they could find and put them in front of a weather map. And that's how they did the weather on TV. David Letterman, same thing. That's an actual picture of him in Indianapolis doing the weather in the 70s. And we know what David Letterman went on to, obviously. That's why I'm growing the beard, so I can be just like him now. So in order to distinguish yourself, you get what's called a CBM, or Certified Broadcast Meteorology little sticker that you put on your TV screen when you see it. It just means that you're dealing with a degreed experienced meteorologist. Except for people who are about my age or older, and we already established I'm 45, right? Just go with it. If they're older, they may have been grandfathered into the old program, which didn't require a degree, but just to require the experience and a judging of how you did on television. But in my team at Boston 25, you'll always know you have a degreed meteorologist, because I won't hire anybody except degreed meteorologists. And basically, it's selfish. I don't want to be home on a Saturday and have somebody call me and say, I don't know how to do this forecast. I want to make sure the people I hire can do the forecast. I can be home on Saturday and not have to worry about it. So we have an excellent team of meteorologists, and a couple, Tucker Antico's our youngest guy, and just turned 27, which is, I was 26 when I started up here in Boston. Oh gosh, I'm giving away the age again. So, he's kind of following up the fits. So we'll talk a little bit about climate change too. There's the word debate is probably a misnomer, but the bottom line is the debate is over what's causing it, not is it happening. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And look, we're warming, we know that. Everything points to it. Carbon dioxide goes up, temperature goes up, and it's been happening. It hasn't been as stark in Boston, although you can see in the 2010s the average temperature certainly was going up a little higher. Now, the scale here, you see it's just 1 degree going up, so we're not talking about going 10 degrees higher. Okay, it's just going up slowly, but every 1/10 of a degree makes a difference, and it's something that we have to deal with in our changing world. Again, 30 years in Boston, how it's looked over the last 30 years. So then we talk about snowfall patterns, and this is where I did a lot of the research regarding snowfall to go along with temperature. But something you have to remember is that it doesn't have to be a below average year to get a lot of snowfall as far as temperature, especially when the average temperature in January is right near freezing. If it's just slightly above that, you can still get a whole bunch of snow. In fact, you might get more because warmer air can hold a lot more water. So if a storm comes up the coast from the Gulf of Mexico and it's 33 degrees, yeah, it's above freezing, but it can still pound snow, as you know, being in New England for a long time. You can get a whole bunch of snow out of that. In days when it's 24, 22 degrees, often it's too dry to produce snow. So, gosh, I keep hitting that. When you hear the phrase, it's too cold to snow, there's a little validity to that in that it's not really too cold, it's too dry to snow often when it's that cold out. Certainly we've had storms where it's been in the teens and we've had a blizzard. It can happen. But you really have to have the right ingredients come together for something like that. So I started looking at all the things, and again, these maps are going to be hard to distinguish from where you're looking at, but what I'm basically showing you is that there's been a widespread decline in U.S. winter snowfall. All the red you see there is a change in snowfall in inches, so it's negative in a lot of places. If you're a skier, you know this certainly, whether here in New England or out there in the West. I still have years that are big, don't get me wrong, but overall it's been a decline. And a lot of our winter forecasting goes back to ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation. Have you heard of El Nino before? And I'm not just talking to the Spanish-speaking people in the room. It's a scientific thing. El Nino and La Nina. El Nino is a warming of the Pacific Ocean waters, and La Nina is a cooling, Southern Pacific. And because the whole globe is connected, if you change, it's like putting a ripple in a stream, and that ripple goes out to the sides. If you put a ripple in the jet stream, in the weather pattern anywhere in the world, it's going to reverberate all around the globe. So if you change the water temperature in one place, what we found is that changes the weather pattern in that one area, which then that wave propagates all around the globe. In some places more so than others. And of course, here in New England, there's really no distinct pattern. So it doesn't help us a ton. But I did the research anyway, and we'll take a look at that. This is generally what the wintertime La Nina pattern looks like. And what you'll see is that blue line goes to our west and to our north. What that means is the overriding storm path in a La Nina winter, which is this one, is a path that goes to our west and to our north, meaning we tend to drag warm air in here. If you're to the right of that blue line or south of it, you're warm, to the north, it's cold. Think of the jet stream. We talk about warm fronts and cold fronts on weather maps. A jet stream is essentially a front way up in the atmosphere. So it separates the cold air from the warm air from intruding into our area, generally. And if the path goes like that, you tend to get more warm air coming in. Doesn't mean you're going to get all rain, but you get in La Nina winters a lot more ice or rain snowstorms, where it snows in the mountains and rains at the coast, a lot more than in a typical normal year. In La Nina winters, we see a difference in snowfall, still a negative difference here in New England. However, we've had, and this is all the below average snowfalls in just La Nina winters. You can see all the red on there. So we definitely get less snowfall. This year happens to be a weak La Nina. So when you're talking about El Nino and La Nina, you have to talk about weak and strong, and there are other variables that go along with it. And we know very well that this year is right now neutral, trending toward La Nina. So a weak La Nina ends this winter coming up. Snowfall during weak La Nina, you see the blue over there in New England? Way over there. In weak La Nina winters, we don't have as many below average snowfalls as in a regular La Nina winter. So that's all a good way to tell you, I have no idea what's going to happen. No. This is what the National Weather Service put out, or NOAA, back at the beginning of the winter, and they updated it in December, in January, February, March. Going to be above average precipitation to our west, below average to our south, and look at us in the white area. Equal chances. Gee, thanks. Appreciate that. Noah, how about temperature? Well, that's something. Although it certainly isn't playing out that way right now, is it? So we're in January, and we're supposed to be well above normal for January, February, March. So to get there, we better be above normal in February or March to counteract January. Although what you may not know is January, as cold as it's been, we've averaged 1 degree below average. Just one. And since our average temperature is about freezing in January, 1 degree makes it just below freezing. Every degree counts. And that can be the difference between ice and no ice, for instance, in a certain storm or when you're walking around. But it really hasn't been a brutally cold January. It's felt it. I felt it too. If you walk a dog, you know what I'm talking about. But in years past, we've had much worse Januaries than this one. This is not too far from a normal winter. I will absolutely not go through all of these. You will be bored to death. But the biggest one I wanted to focus on is that top one. It's called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, because it absolutely took our winter last year and made it as warm and snowless as it was. And this has to do with the ocean temperatures in the northern Pacific, just off the coast of the west. And what we find in certain years can be positive or negative. And right now it's in a negative or a cold phase. What does that mean? Well, you have to take that and you have to combine that with other features. And since that one is a decadal oscillation, it's not going to change much over a winter. The other ones that I had on there can change every couple of weeks, and that can vary your forecast. But we have to look at the longer term ones in order to come up with a forecast that's going to be months in advance. So if we look at the PDO, which is negative, and ENSO, which is that neutral phase going toward a weak La Nina, there are only this many years since the 50s that have both those things happening. So now I've got it narrowed down a bit. I'm thinking, okay, I'm on to something here. Let's take a look at that. Got a negative PDO, weak La Nina, and all the ones in red here had below average snowfall. Of course, the ones in blue there had above average snowfall. So it can go either way, but when we're talking about statistics and averages, you're going to lean toward which one is more prevalent, in this case, below average. Make sense so far? You with me? All right. On the right there, I put the numbers. The average of all these years is 42 inches. Our average snowfall at the top there is 49 inches in Boston. So the average of all these years is slightly below average. But the average of those red years is just 33 inches. Last year we had about 10, you might remember, actually less than 10 in Boston. And if you throw out the high and low, as you tend to do in statistics, throw out the extremes, you still end up at 42 inches, the average. So it's leaning toward a below average snowfall year. Oh wait, there's more. I also did Worcester, and I focused on Boston and Worcester because generally you could take Boston and apply it to the coastline, apply it to Rhode Island, coastal Connecticut, at least for trends, not so much the exact numbers, but trends. And for Worcester, you can apply it toward northern Connecticut, Hartford area, into New Hampshire and Vermont for what they might expect for a trend. So in Worcester, your average is 71 inches a year. Again, all the red ones are below average, the blue ones are above, a little bit more even with Worcester. And remember, that's because of that track. If you have that track that goes to our west, you're going to get more warm air coming to the coastal areas and may reduce your snowfall, but it still stays a little colder to the northwest. So it tends to be kind of a 50-50 shot more so in Worcester. It still ends up below normal if you take those red years, but if you throw out the high and low, you're still 73 inches, you're still right about average for a year. So the trend is to be below average in Boston and about average in Worcester. Doesn't tell you a heck of a lot, does it? Well, so far this season, Boston's at a deficit of 7 inches, and I updated this right after the snow the other day. So that includes last Saturday. We're down 7 inches. We're down about a foot in Worcester. So I then went back and looked to see, well, what happens if we have years who have only had this much snow up to this point with that negative PDO and the weak La Nina? Well, I went down a rabbit hole. But if, and you can keep going with this, right? So, but if you do that, it only turned out there were 2 years in Boston and 2 years in Worcester that fit those criteria since the 1950s. Now, records go back to the 1800s, but I wanted to keep it more in our current climate regime rather than looking back at before the Industrial Revolution, for instance. So 1975 and 2023, those 2 years, those are the total snowfall for the entire winter, given all the criteria that I just told you. So if that plays out, we're not going to have much snow the rest of the winter. Yeah, I agree. And also in Worcester, it turns out that 47.2 might sound like a lot to you, but remember, that's, what, 25 inches below average for Worcester even. So if the trend were to continue, if we were to stay with the PDO negative, or cold, which we will, because it's not going to change this year, certainly, and it's a decadal oscillation, it may be a few more years. And if we do indeed get a weak La Nina, which we're trending toward, we're going to end up with less snowfall than average. And that's all well and good, but you talk a lot about temperatures because you're talking about heating. So let's talk a little bit about temperature. We've had 3 colder starts than this one. It's going back, actually, I did go all the way back to the 1800s for this. And only 3 years we have colder starts than this. Every one of them had an above average February. Every one of them. Well, remember, this also is encompassing those years that we looked at PDO and so those things I told you about. So we're focusing on a smaller subset of years here. But every one of those years, after a cold January, had an above average February. That sounds good. Sounds good for heating prospects. Less money you might have to spend to heat, which may be true. But again, remember, what's above average mean? Could mean it's 34 degrees instead of 32 degrees. It's still cold. When we talk about global climate change and our changing environment, and we're saying, okay, we're warming. Sure, we're warming, but warming by tenths of a degree. So we're not talking about, oh, well, we're not going to need heating anymore. You know, people are going to be fine. They're going to be able to walk in shorts in December. I wish. It doesn't play out that way. So the word global warming stopped being used several years ago and was replaced with climate change. And the reason that was done, well, there were political reasons as well as not political reasons, but from a scientific standpoint, it made sense to get that word out of there because people were thinking, you know, we're going to be like Florida in 10 years or 50 years. And that's just not the case. We'll be warmer by tenths of a degree, and it makes a difference when it comes to heating, when it comes to sea level rise, when it comes to glaciers melting. But it doesn't make a huge difference in your average year to year for temperatures as far as what your climate locally is going to be. That makes sense to you? In Worcester, we also had 3 years that started colder than this one. Only one of those was below average in February and one below average in March. So here's what I'm trying to tell you. If this year continues a trend that it's on, and there's no reason to think it won't, even January is playing out. If I had done this talk back in November, if you did have this breakfast in November this year, I would have absolutely told you the numbers show January will be cold. And that's not because I'm such an incredible forecaster. That's me crunching numbers. And the numbers show that January tends to be cold in these patterns, then we rebound for February. And March tends to level out again. And every one of them would tend to be a lower snowfall. I tell you all that, but then I look back to times like 2015. You remember that winter? We had like no snow until January 26th, and then it wouldn't stop. So there's no guarantee that it's definitely going to play out this way. But from all the data that we look at and all the information that we have and all the historical data, we are seeing this pattern set in for this winter. So we wouldn't be stuck at 10 inches. We're almost there already anyway, but we might get 25 inches in Boston, something along those lines. And see a rebound in February as far as temperature, so it won't be quite as icy cold as it has been in January. Just keep in mind, as I mentioned, it still means it's going to be cold. I guess I could have showed you that while I was talking about it. That might be my last one. So that's essentially how the forecast is looking. When we get through this season, and something anecdotally I should mention, just something I've been noticing of these, I didn't crunch numbers on this, but it really seems like as part of our climate change, we're shifting the seasons a bit. Meaning we tend to stay warmer into the fall. And on the other side of it, we've been staying a little colder into March, April, and even into early May. In just recent years, we've had snow, a little bit of snow in Worcester County in early May. So those shifts that we're seeing may go along, and I'd have to do more research to see exactly what's causing that, but anecdotally anyway, it seems to be the way things are going. I think hopefully you got the gist of all of that. My forecasts, over the last 33 years have been absolutely perfect, so this will be no different than that. We really try hard and I mentioned that I would talk a little bit about climate change. I don't want to belabor the point. I know energy companies are trying hard to go toward cleaner energy, and I think that's all well and good. But if there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. Climate change is happening. There's no doubt. I could bring a renowned scientist up here who could show you reams of data of how we're about to start a cooling phase, and by 2050 our temperature will be significantly cooler globally than it is right now. And he'd be very convincing. And then you could have the other side. I could stand here and debate him on that and why it's going to keep warming. And the bottom line is this. If we're warming, and we are so far, does it really matter what's causing it? And that's the whole debate. When you get into the political side of it, it's man-made. No, it's natural cycles. It's a combination of the two. What's causing it? Doesn't matter. The numbers don't lie. The fact is the temperature's trending up. So what do we do about it? So in my opinion, and feel free to debate me afterwards or throw food at me, I think that what we should be focusing our attention on is mitigation. Stop building your home right on the ocean. I'd love that too, but you gotta be realistic. Once it gets knocked down, don't build it back up again. I apologize for those of you who might have done that. We've already know how tough it is for homes to be insured, for instance. Florida is a prime example of that. That's where most of my family lives, and even away from the shoreline, they're paying upwards of $7,000 a year for insurance for their home, and that's just for a small ranch, like a 1,500 square foot ranch. So it's expensive not just at the coast. At least they can get insurance inland, but it's exorbitant for them to pay that much money. So when we're looking at climate change and what it could cause and what it could do to us, the best way to go about this is to figure out how we're going to live in this new climate at the same time as we continue what the state has been talking about with getting costs down and clean energy. Absolutely great things. When it comes to clean energy, if you're not a proponent of clean energy, and I won't ask you to raise your hand, that's fine, but I say why not? Because even if you threw away climate change, you don't want to believe it, it's all nonsense, so it's all political, okay, don't you want cleaner air? Don't you want better water? Don't you want an environment for our children to grow up in that's not going to be going toward an India kind of a smoggy country, or have more wildfires like we're seeing in California? So why not go toward a cleaner energy and clean up our air, if for no other reason? Throw away climate change if you have to, and just think about the other benefits of having clean energy and a cleaner environment. So that's where I stand on that. And again, you don't have to agree with me on that. I will get off my soapbox. Thank you for having me. I really am honored to be here today, and I hope it warms up. Thank you.
Now we would like to take this opportunity to honor a special individual with the Fund's annual award. Justin, please come up and help me recognize our honoree. The 16th Annual Chairman's Award acknowledges someone who, in the opinion of the Fund's chairman and the Good Neighbor Energy Fund Committee, has contributed to the success of the fund over the years. Our honoree has been a dedicated member of the committee for more than 11 years, working closely with sponsoring energy companies while monitoring and managing the finances of the fund. She is very committed to the fund's work, always ready to help with a can-do attitude. It is with great pleasure that I recognize Christina Joseph, Corp's Accounting Assistant with the Massachusetts Division of the Salvation Army, with this year's Good Neighbor Energy Fund Chairman's Award. Christina, please come up. Congratulations. Christina, thank you again for your dedication to the fund over the years. Now, to conclude our program, we have the honor of accepting the annual contributions for a couple of the funds sponsoring energy companies. With Commonwealth enduring freezing temperatures, it's important to process these grants so that those in need can receive assistance right away. Major Khan, please come back up to help Justin accept these donations. Please present your check to the Major and Justin, and we'll take a quick photo. Both of these sponsors have been consistent, generous supporters of the fund throughout the years. I understand that John Alvarez, Manager of Community Relations for Eversource, please come up. Let's mark the fund's 40th anniversary milestone by exceeding the campaign's year's fundraising goal of $500,000 and by providing energy assistance to every household in our state who is eligible. Now I would like to ask Captain Emmanuel Villegas with the Salvation Army's Lynn Corps to give the benediction. Captain?
So, Lord, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for such opportunity that we have to gather here today. Thank you, Lord, for the funds that you have provided so that we can continue to service those across our states who are in need, Lord. And now, Father, as we go, just give us traveling mercy as we go our own ways, and may your protection be upon us. Amen.
I'm Kevin Lemanowitz, Chief Meteorologist at Boston 25. We were here today for the 40th anniversary of the Energy Fund Kickoff Breakfast, and what a great event. We had representatives from the state and from utility companies as well as the Salvation Army talk to us about how important this is to help getting fuel assistance to those in need during these cold winter months. And of course, I was here to give a presentation about the weather and about how cold it's been and how cold it may or may not be for the rest of this winter. Spoiler alert, it doesn't look like it's going to continue to be cold into February. We'll see if that works out.
How you doing? My name is Justin Stearns. I'm the chairperson of the Good Neighbor Energy Fund in Massachusetts, and we had just finished up our annual kickoff breakfast. Had a great turnout. We're very excited for this fund's year. Our goal is to raise over $500,000 for families in Massachusetts in need during the winter season, and we hope to help every family that can help. If you know someone who needs assistance, or if you need assistance yourself, please reach out to Salvation Army. And I appreciate everyone for coming out, and looking forward to a great fun year.